Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. Since having a near-death experience, I have the gift of communicating with the subtle energies of the cosmos. This happens in a form of deep meditation, where I ask certain entities from the other world to interact with me. One of the first afterlife contacts was my old friend and teacher, friend of the Indians, and it's a great pleasure for me to bring you these conversations as an addition to the books in this way. Hello, my dear Padawans. Let's dive into the next big chapter, soul physics. And we're starting with connections. Let's go. My dear friend and teacher, I'm curious where you're taking me today and what you're teaching me. Subtitles by the Embark community.
Through the realms of cosmos, energies connect through the forces of their respective ability to love. This power is closely tied to consciousness, as you know, and both together not only provide one's own power potential, and thus one's own growth potential, but also the potential of perceiving the entire cosmos. I would like to use this chapter to point out, at this point and at this moment, as the whole cosmos consists exclusively of consciousness and love, lives in energy units, his all-pervading, all-creating power of the source give every living being what you would call a lifeline, something that permeates everything and sustains everything. The power of love, just like the power of consciousness, but they are linked to the individual mobility of each being. My conscious perception becomes the loving perception to the impulses that I give and exert, and also reflect through my power. All this is directed.
Okay, just briefly, for my exact understanding. You're saying that everything is guided by your power. I thought the handlebars are love and consciousness.
No, we're differentiating a bit more precisely now.
Oh!
It is my power, my potential power, my power accumulated so far in my soul, which ultimately make me what I am through love, energy, and consciousness. But without power, my consciousness and my love would be useless, not for me and not for the cosmos.
I understand. Please continue talking.
The potential power is therefore the most important basis on which the ability to love and consciousness arise and can grow. The different areas which we have already visited are, as you have learned, all reachable through different power potentials. You remember,
Yes.
Your soul is more powerful. The more it can move and the larger and faster, therefore it is in the higher spheres. However, if the soul has lost more strength than it had before it incarnated into the bodies from the mother soul, their path will not lead to powerful levels, but for now, to the world of the deceased, the waiting room, as you and I named it. There they linger, rest until they reincarnate again, until they hopefully grow, continue to rise, and so on.
Interestingly, that resembles a bit of which is also taught in the local religions. They teach that one should live a pure life and not do certain things, to not lose power, so that one can then go to the so-called paradise after death. Then the cause of this story is essentially comprehensible and similar.
In principle, yes, definitely. darling.
Pity. It's a pity that they make so much wrong from this correct approach and do not promote people. Instead, suppress their energy through guilt and with terms such as sin and the like. This belittles people and ultimately achieves the exact opposite.
Yes, it's really very, very sad. The approach, as you say, is correct, but the implementation is totally wrong. They ultimately rob the impulse of breadth and promotion of breath through prohibitions and fears. I still don't understand why such beautiful impulses are distorted and alienated in the end to achieve something completely different than what the original impulse is.
Well, my answer to that is quite simple. These people, these guardians of religion, they are no longer connected to the cosmos. They just live out some old masks and use that for themselves and their ego.
That's how it is.
All right. Let's not get stuck there. Please continue. You also wanted to talk about the connections between them.
Yes. When entities travel the cosmos, walk and wander in it, they explore it with the forces of their consciousness. More so in the way of perceiving, you understand the existing one. With their ability to love, which is tied to power, they also change other fields. But of course, this is only if it is desired, if it's been asked for. I would like to point out that the cosmos contains various beings. There are those who mean help for each other, to each other and with each other. I want to emphasize that no state in the cosmos, as you would say, is set in stone. Everything is in transition. But it can be guided over the souls themselves with the best intention, but also through external impulses. But even those can only follow the impulse of a plea from a soul.
What exactly do you mean by saying that all beings perceive each other and all beings can help each other? So you're saying that the more powerful levels exert influence on the weaker ones and vice versa,
Yes.
right?
Yes, although please let me be precise. The more powerful levels, thanks by the way for avoiding spatial hierarchy at this point, can influence into the weaker planes when asked. This means that they are in constant connection with these and perceive the impulses as well.
Yes. And how is it the other way around? I mean, a deceased in the waiting area can't really harness the power
Perceiving the light-filled areas, he is hardly capable of perceiving himself, if at all. Often does not even realize that there are others beside him. Yes, that's correct. Unfortunately, that's the problem with these levels, where perception is clouded due to weak forces, that they cannot perceive the other beings in the cosmos. But whoever hears these words gets this perhaps decisive, important information for him. Should it happen that you become conscious again in a state after passing away, after the transition in which the surroundings are perceived as gloomy or dark, and coldness or even loneliness govern the feeling in you, then you know that your perception is the problem and you can ask for help at any time.
It's very important you say that. Thank you. And how is that supposed to happen? I mean, I'm trying to imagine it. I realize, oh damn, I probably don't have that much strength. That's why I somehow don't make it so far. And I'm somehow stuck here in a kind of space or level, and now I don't even know what I and how I can do so I can change something about it. That scares me a bit at the same time. when I try to fulfill it because I think, oh God, now I'm stuck here for all eternity. So how is this supposed to work now? How should one call for help here? Please help with more specific information.
Very gladly. If this kind of perception you're describing appears as reality, I emphasize appears, so you correctly name that the fears, which also name residues of the ego in this soul quality, these fears can inhibit this soul from expanding and moving like a virus. They break it. Because fear, dear people, is not a power of the soul. So, trust is the tool that needs to be remembered at this moment. Trust the cosmic guidance, trust in the cosmos, which is in love, and ultimately, love is the opposite of fear. So, if you feel cold, loneliness and fears, you need to ask for help. This is about concentration. Even the smallest force in the cosmos, if it possesses consciousness, can, through the interconnectedness of powerful levels, can be perceived with the less powerful levels.
I find this extremely important and exciting because any ordinary person would now ask, how does that work? Why can they all perceive it? And now you are sending me a picture, an image that I ask you to describe yourself first.
If I can do that, I'll try.
Do not do that.
Connection exists because all energies are interconnected through the power of the source that permeates them. You must imagine it like the power of the sun that permeates you and does not end with you. It continues to flow through you. And in the subtle, this is the power of the source, which flows through everything, but filled with consciousness, everything is also connected, can be perceived. Consciousness is part of these energies.
What I perceive is a kind of sea of energy. Imagine you are swimming in it, and imagine that the water is self-consciousness. You feel the water on your skin. The only little difference now is that the water, in a subtle way, permeates you. So it means that this consciousness which is in the water also permeates you. And that's why you feel everything that's in this sea of consciousness. You can, depending on the purity within you, so the purity of your body, your soul body, perceive what is in this sea of consciousness. Every energy is with consciousness. Perceives, thinks and feels. It's like a vast ocean of consciousness and love. One, everything. You are immersed in this energy. It's actually very, very beautiful. If I wasn't so open already, I would now instantly burst into tears because it's so beautiful.
If you were not so far and open, you could not perceive it at all, my dear.
Yes. I just wanted to talk about the emotion, the sublimity, the beauty, and this incredible love. The power of love that goes along with it. To feel all that. It also means it in love. To feel. That's what I wanted to talk about. But did I describe it correctly? Yes.
In principle, very nicely described. Just don't forget. The individual perception doesn't dissolve in this sea, but it's a kind of mix, as you would say. One always perceives the whole more in terms of consciousness and love, but one remains oneself. One does not dissolve in it.
I remember my moment on the other side, as they say. It was exactly like that. And this sea of love and awareness, That left an overwhelming impression on me at the time. This clarity with which one suddenly is, I wish it to everyone. This force of love that surrounds you and permeates you is truly indescribable. One thinks it's love. But it's so much more and so much more powerful. The word love is actually not enough. I understand if you keep on. Again, you all always point out that the power of love must definitely be kept alive throughout life. Otherwise, this game, jump, this transition, I'm really using the word now, intense, too intense. The leap from a perceived life without love to an energetics full of love. So when one moves from this energy to the other energy, and this is something that is cosmically steered, that you can't stop, then it might feel like it's almost tearing your heart apart. Because suddenly this power of love is perceived so intensely. I deliberately didn't say now. Because the power of love suddenly pervades. Because I know that this power of love always pervades. But then you perceive them more and clearer, right?
Correct. Exactly. It's very nice that you're naming this divergence. Indeed, it is very important information for everyone listening to this. Love and consciousness are integral parts of your souls. Whoever doesn't live this or consciously guide and care for it, he will find the transition energetics very alien. Divergences arise, tensions arise, questions arise, confusions arise, and maybe fears again. What a pity! But is the soul its whole life? So in the physical, grown and cleansed, but above all unfolded in their love power. That's how it is, like perceiving the forces even more clearly. Like lighting a light, like an amplification of that, what was perceived during one's lifetime.
That's how I picture it too. That's what I imagine too. And it actually does feel like momentarily stepping out of your body and to continue to feel as one did before. There's almost no difference except that one, of course, travels the other levels differently now, feels more freedom, more space, and can also feel more love power. But in the end, it's not like that. Nothing strange and nothing scary.
That's how it is sung,
yes,
exactly that
but returning
way.
to this increase in energies, this increase of energies and consciousness and love, it allows for the higher levels, the higher frequency areas, the impulses, the requests from the lower frequency areas. Perceives, can perceive. And were you able to observe certain movements, or do you know all this? Or where do you know all this from?
I just have to laugh, because I don't just know this, dear, but because I live it. If you call me, he barks.
Yes.
Others call me, so I am.
Yes.
For example, the traveling and helping and answering of questions is already part of this tool in the cosmos. You call? I'm coming. Others are calling. I'm coming. And that's how it is throughout the cosmos, with all entities, with all love.
Wow. So essentially a request from the waiting room of the deceased could basically cause, for example, one of the masters of light to move there. I'm just asking because physically, I can't imagine that a soul with little strength is actually heard in the higher levels.
Can become. So the power, the intensity of the impulse should not reach that far.
It was
right?
hot.
Very smart, very smartly asked, love. And that's how it is in principle. The upper levels can, of course, only perceive the strong impulses. but you would be surprised. So some souls can also be perceived from the waiting hall of the deceased, which we described so lovingly, because the impulse was strong enough. This happens sometimes when the despair in these souls has become so great that they must give the impulse. Then gather all the strength you have to send this distress call. And then he is also heard by the higher levels.
Wow. And where do they go? What happens if not? Where do the impulses go the most when the impulse is not very strong?
Most of the time they go into the plane of the white spheres and of course into the plane of the angels.
Yes, sure, makes sense. Is the cosmos perhaps structured in such a way that the white spheres and the angels come first? So, can we say that they are readily available as little helpers to make things faster and easier? Well, I mean, that would have been for me from my current thinking and feeling. There's a certain logic in my current body. Subtitles from the Embark.org community.
I love learning something
Subtitles by the
new
Embark.org
from
community.
you in our conversations. Interestingly, I haven't even asked myself this question yet, but she could actually be justified. The little creatures for the weak energies as quick aids, and the big ones for the larger ones. Yes, it seems to be that way.
For the bigger cries for help. That brings me to another point. Does it mean that the upper levels just help each other or differently? It surprises me that they even need help from each other.
Wait. Of course, the higher ups travel to the lower levels to exchange ideas and also to provide assistance. You yourself are forgiveness in physical state. In a bodiless state, one of those who gives these aids quickly and often.
What's the deal with incarnated souls now? Please help me with this.
When the souls are in the body,
Yes.
thus their power potential is just as crucial as without a body. What I mean is, when a weak soul asks for help, the white orbs as well as the angels, maybe even someone from the fourth level, will come to their aid. When someone very powerful, like you for example, asks for help, thus it's other levels that are being reached. The principle is original, as you so nicely put it, the same.
Yes. You are funny that you sometimes make use of my vocabulary.
But of course,
that's funny.
That's the principle. And I sometimes find it very funny.
Why do you find him
because
funny?
it's so different from back then, when we exchanged directly within our bodies.
Yes. This is the time now. These are the words of this time. And that's why this is my vocabulary.
Yes, and I appreciate
Okay,
him.
thanks. Let's keep talking. So the principle is the same, and here too, energy potential creates resonance.
That's how it
But
is.
if a person really needs a lot of help, then his potential power would be a kind of limit, a boundary that is set for him. Can't a person who has very little strength still reach and call upon the high vibrating levels?
But yes, he can naturally, but it's not that easy.
What would be the tools? What would a person have to do to really reach the high frequencies?
I have to mention several components. First and foremost, he needs to gain strength by fostering love within himself, and that in large parts. This in turn means sorrow, frustration, gable, abandon, hate. All that you can generate in negative aspects of human life. This process can go quickly. It can take years though, and some never make it in their lifetime. It takes the decision and attention, as always. Then he must connect with the cosmic forces, for instance, By practicing the cosmic cross exercise daily, there begins energy to flow from other levels through him to aid him in this request, to activate. If someone does these exercises daily, the energy potential in this person increases, but as already mentioned, only when the heart is open. And this person needs to be in a place that does not drain them, but gives them power. In the best case, near an energy cross, or he creates this energy at home through altars or ritual places. There are many ways to promote this. Consistency, mindfulness, love, power, and the will from the power are important tools to achieve this state. To have so much power, to be heard from higher levels, to be heard from high vibrating levels.
Interesting. Honestly, I'd like to differentiate a bit. Why do you need the higher levels if you have the angels and the white balls? If they anyway understand and do. They always do in the end, don't they?
Yes.
Also, they are more or less always reachable. The spheres, the white spheres, and the angels. Why do we need the higher ones now? High vibrating teachers and beings.
For instance, to reach your own destiny, love your own destiny. The white orbs and the angels can't do that. They help clean the energy fields or accomplish other tasks, fulfill other requests. But they are not capable of transforming the soul quality in you. These could be the higher vibrating frequencies.
Hold on. Cleaning is also changing, right? If the white spheres and the angels can transform soul frequencies, they can cleanse. Then in the end, they do change.
Yes, you are right. So please let me be more nuanced here. The white balls and the angels cleanse. By following the request of the soul, they can remove the negative fields, and being able to help the soul fully come into its power. Real transformation in the quality of the soul, in the core of the soul, is not achievable by them.
And it's a high frequency. So, beings can really affect the quality of the soul. I always thought no one could. That's something only one can do themselves. I built the cocktail of my soul myself. Isn't it?
And once again, I use your word. A mix from different areas should be mentioned here, dear. Firstly, when the soul has the desire and has gathered enough strength to actually formulate it into the higher vibrating, highly vibrating levels, their wish, then this is already a transformation that has taken place in this soul. She has then gathered so much strength that she has already changed a lot by herself. Then she can also ask the entities to be helpers of the cosmos, to accelerate further transformations within itself. And she can do that by virtue of her free will, which in turn is equipped with a lot of power. Now give the right impulses, and always in harmony with the energies of the cosmos that is transformed in this soul. But this time also about the helpers of the upper, higher vibrating levels.
What can they change in a soul frequency? For instance, let's take me as an example. What could I wish for from the high frequency beings that I still roam in my soul?
You could, for example, ask for it gradually getting more and more impulses of the forces, movements in the cosmos.
Impulses of the force movement that would ultimately shape what we call clairvoyance, right?
Yes, train your perception further, expand further. And since everything is always in motion, it's not only good if you perceive what is, but also what and how it moves. Recognizing the movement, so to speak, that's a goal. In any case, a more defined type of perception. But that would be my answer.
The movement of the cosmos, the movements within the cosmos. I find that very exciting. What would then change?
Trust. The moment you would formulate these requests, would your perceptions, your powers, change in such a way that you could also perceive the movements better? The individual steps of this transformation are not of relevance.
Right. Okay. So it's more or less about fine-tuning the actual potential of the soul when you call upon the high vibration beings. Right? Absolutely. I had asked before what it's like when, for example, many souls are hurled from their bodies. When that happens, in a big accident or a war, what happens then and what energies come to help?
We've already talked about that, love. In such conditions, several things need to be taken into account. On one hand, many forces come to balance the energies of these souls. On the other hand, entities from the higher levels also come to give souls the opportunity, if they are able, to perceive them, so they can be perceived in the power potential to receive them there. So in principle, it is the difference that the frequencies of the upper levels go to the earth to be perceived more easily there.
This is a bit difficult to understand now because I'm fundamentally a big fan of how it, as I was taught, to emphasize that everything is always there. All frequencies are always simultaneously side by side with each other, within each other. And if you're talking about such movements on the matter, this does not mean that these beings are always around me and I just have to tune into her frequency, but that she's actually at a location. Please help me put this in perspective a bit better now.
When you describe the theme of the subtle worlds, you're right. That all in all always consists together. It's a matter of perception and the power potentials of the individual, which frequencies are perceived, but which are there all the time. So it's like a radio that just needs to tune to the right station to perceive the respective frequency, but are broadcast in space all the time. However, this is not possible in coarse matter. We cannot have all these frequencies in the Earth's magnetic field, maintain, let them exist. This is actually given outside the Earth frequency.
Well, look, that's an important point because it naturally raises the question where you guys are then. If you're not in the magnetic field or the Earth's field, then naturally one would want to know, where are you? But I already know. I can feel the answer.
Words for you?
Yes, please.
Then allow me this. Of course, we are not present on Earth all the time, because this means a transformation of our frequencies into a very coarse measure. When we visit the subtle levels, there is no location. I can't tell you right now. It goes up to the right, to the third level.
Now you're being funny again. I like that.
It is
Please
simply
continue.
and poo, or is it? It is simply like that when the souls leave the body, the ethereal worlds become perceptible. But you know that. But the deceased's worldly surroundings are still perceived.
Yes.
Do you understand me?
But that leads me into a different topic, which I honestly want to look at more deeply another time. Otherwise, we'll get off topic now. Anyway, I just wanted to know to what extent the higher levels, even down to the lower levels, take effect. And I have understood that now. Thank you. So even there, the Masters of the Light and the White Brotherhood can come from their own impulses. Or... no.
My love, it's not a personal
yes.
impulse.
He is
It is a logical consequence of a certain resonance in the cosmos. Very slowly, when many souls are ejected from bodies into states of shock, paralysis or mutilations. So, the Rao attracts the upper forces for reasons of resonance, to balance. That's the essence
That
of the
means
topic.
they then have to come in order to energetically balance and to be there, to be present.
So it is. To show presence and to facilitate being perceived, that is then their task.
Okay, now I get it. Back to the unity of all energies with one. If a soul manages to gather a lot of strength, and thus manages to reach the high vibrating beings as well, however, she cannot manage to call the source directly, because then she would have to be as strong as the source to find the direct channel, so it should be as strong as the source. The same applies to the soul of Mother, right?
Yes, correct.
So all energy units below the soul are accessible through consciousness. It's about a single soul, nothing more, nothing less. That's how it is. Okay, I get it, and it makes sense. The picture that you're sending me right now shows one could say, wild hustle and bustle of the cosmos. The layers are not always clearly separated from each other. So for me, at least, they're noticeable. But white balls are also at the mile markers. See you then. Angels are also with the masters. At the same time, in the waiting room, is it really bustling? Nice. Can you send me that picture right away?
Because you allow me.
Wow. And I must say it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's vibrant. You can't breathe in as deeply as this feeling fills you. So I have this feeling of abundance when I breathe in deeply and of life and vitality. But that doesn't even begin to describe what I feel when I observe this abundance, this beauty, and this doing, this hustle, this being. And it's delightful. There's an indescribable, always permeating power of joy, which is probably part of love, right?
Yes, my dear, it is part of love. I wanted to give you this picture as a conclusion to this chapter, so that you can see the complexity again with a different perception. Each level has its tasks and areas, but they interact lovingly with each other. Love for each other, for the well-being of others. And in the end, yes, enjoy and love and love and love and awareness.
Wow, thank you. My dear friend, may I ask what your next plans with me are?
Well, if you ask like that, you'll experience it.
Okay. Then I'm very much looking forward to the surprise. What's coming next? I found it very, very, very exciting. Thanks for the great insights.
I found it exciting, cheerful, and loving. Thanks, love.
Thank you, love.